Welcome to a new episode of the Opening Bid Podcast. I'm Yahoo Finance Executive Editor Brian Sozzi. Like I always say, this is the podcast that will make you a smarter investor, period. And big news, this is our 1-year anniversary of this podcast. When we started over a year ago, we were like, yeah, let's do a podcast. But 154 episodes later, I don't know how I taped all these things, but we did. They're out there on the internet. I encourage you to read all of them. 1 year later, we're here with 154 episodes, amazing conversations. I've learned a ton about leadership, investing, markets, about human beings. So I'm very grateful to have done this. Shout out to the Yahoo Finance team. Their work on these podcasts have been absolutely amazing. But given it is a special episode, I have to have brought you a special guest, and I have one. That is Pat Gellzinger. Pat, I didn't know how to intro you, so I figured I'd just say it's Pat Gellzinger. Pat Gellzinger, former Intel CEO, former VMware CEO, technologist, an artist. I didn't even know you're an artist.
Yeah, my Rembrandt, the 8046 in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. So, all these things you have to learn about me, Saz.
I'm like, let's just go with Pat because I've talked to Pat for many years. It's good to see you. Actually, on that, let's start on that picture behind you. What is that exactly, and what did you help create?
Well, I was architect number one, was the design manager bringing the 8046 into production. And so this is signed by myself and the chief architect, John Crawford. And literally it was installed in the Museum of Modern Art in New York when they had a series called Chip Art. Right? The artistic designs of chips. So, yes, so an artist as well here, and what I call my Rembrandt, the 8046, which in its day was the chip.
I imagine you've had some time to reflect in the past few months. Have you gone back to those days and thought about, and we're going to go into a career, chips and everything, but have you thought about what you've created? Because I've talked to you so much, usually on earnings days or at the World Economic Forum. We're there, short period of time, Pat, talking about numbers, but it's hard to take a step back and reflect on your career, I imagine.
Yeah, and obviously, as you're going through periods of transition like this, Saucy, you look back, and the 46, the 386. I did 14 generations of microprocessors. Okay, that's pretty substantial. USB and Wi-Fi, key interconnect that everybody uses. When my granddaughter plugs in a USB stick, she says, "Thank you, Papa." Right? And the industry standard server that became the foundation for cloud computing, and becoming a software executive at VMware, and then coming back, CHIPS Act and restoring semiconductors in the U.S. What an awesome journey for a farm boy who started at 18 years old at Intel. It's been awesome. And, as my wife said, after the retirement from Intel, you're not done yet. So off we go on the next piece of the journey.
So after that, after you leaving Intel, it was December last year. How do you spend the next few months? I have to tell you this. These are pressure-packed situations. And I talked to you, Pat, on times when, earnings weren't that great, and you always still came on with us. And the stock price probably didn't react like you wanted to. Once you're out of that pressure cooker, what do you do?
Well, I did 100 meetings, Sazi. As I say, different venture capitalists, private equity firms, government roles, university roles, different operating roles I might take on. And, one of you sort of make a decision tree and you work through it. And one of our first decisions was, do you want to take on another 7x24 operating role? And I view the CEO job 7x24. You are on, everything's yours. And we decided, okay, the next phase isn't going to be an operating role. And then, it really sort of boiled up to, write big checks in private equity and, being able to make an impact that way, or move into venture capital, which we've done now with Playground Global, deep tech, long tech. And then the other passion I've had throughout my career has been faith. And with the role I've expanded at Glue, a faith tech business, and just the magnitude of the faith community and how bad the technology is, and being able to combine those together, right? 350,000 churches in the US alone. So deep tech, long tech, faith tech, that'll be the next phase of the journey for Linda and I.
Pat, did you get to take a vacation? I'm an extremely energetic guy, but there was a point in 2023 and 24, numerous points, I didn't know where you were next. You were traveling the world. I was trying to follow you through your X account. I'm like, he's literally in different countries, meeting with then President Biden. Have you had the time to just take a week off and just, go on drink a drink somewhere maybe, or I don't know, sip something?
Well, you'll enjoy this. We took the cruise in Asia, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, and got some time away, some more time. All the grandkids Christmas programs this year, and some break. But I'm wired pretty aggressively, as you know, Sazi. So here we are on a cruise, right? We're floating down a little riverboat in the Cambodian jungles, right? Mangrove jungles. And the idea comes of me to write a children's book for my grandchildren. So I'm now working with a publisher, right? Because even when I'm taking a vacation, I can't quite take a vacation. So you can look forward to a copy of The Mangrove Monkeys. I've put all 8 of my grandchildren into the monkey family and their jungle critters. So even when I'm resting, I couldn't quite rest too much.
So tell me this children's book. I didn't see that one coming, Pat. Tell me this children's book somehow ties into semiconductors and chips. These monkeys are using chips, or are they machines?
Absolutely not. This is just monkey critters and little monkeys, and each one of our kids has a character. Each one of the grandkids has a caricature in the monkey family. The rest of the family is is alligators and eagles and jaguars. And so anyway, I'll show you a copy of the mangrove monkey someday.
Yes. I don't like that sign, sir. So you got that out of the way. You went on your cruise. You got the book idea. Now you're general partner at Playground. And for those investors not familiar, what is Playground up to? According to my research, has $1.2 billion of assets under management. That's a very big number. What are they investing in, and what are you up to there?
Yeah, and as we were going through our 100 meetings, 100 days of what's next, when you walk into most venture capitalists, you see a wall of tombstones, as I call it, right? The plexiglass of you too can be like an Airbnb, like a Netflix, and the wall of those IPOs. When you walk into Playground, you find an engineer's playground. You're greeted by robots, right? You see the world's largest 3D printer, right? You have the world's largest free electron laser, chemical labs, etc., and a little playground in the middle, right? This is truly an engineer's playground, and it is deep tech, long tech. Our motto is we invest somewhere between the impossible and the improbable, right? Taking those deep tech things like quantum computing that we started 7 years ago, next generation light sources for EUV, practical robotics, next generation mRNA, biomarkers, deep tech, long tech activities. And I'll be the 4th general partner here, and quite excited about it. As you know, I've always been a geek at heart.
It's like Playground sounding like a big free agent there, Pat. You mentioned practical robots. Are you a big guy that is in on these robots, that we're all going to have them in our house, and I'm going to have a robot doing my laundry and pushing a vacuum?
Well, a couple of our companies are like Agility and Fabric. These companies, it's not about how you replace humans, it's how you augment humans. And with that, warehouse configurations, automating delivery systems, and really bringing robotics into those environments. And I've never been a AI is going to replace us or eat us guy. I'm always, how do we use technology to enhance human existence? And in this case, we're finding extraordinary success where you bring robotics under the command of warehouse workers, for instance, and you get extraordinary efficiency. the ability to augment simple things like cart movements and so on, the ability to have humanoid-like robots, but are aimed at tasks in manufacturing locations. And all of that, of course, is the superpower is AI. Vision, physical AI, the ability to move and operate. So, yeah, it's a pretty exciting domain.
So let's say I come in and I have a robot startup, Pat, and I'm in that room and I have to pitch you. Um, what do what are you looking for in terms of a human being that you would give money to? But also, how do you know their slide deck isn't a bunch of crap?
Yeah. So, I say two things about us at Playground. The first thing is most VCs are looking for you to have had successful IPOs already,
Hmm. Yep.
right? We are not. We are looking for people with deep tech. A better team for us to partner in would be, a handful of PhDs, a professor, 5 people who are the experts in their domain. So that's who we're looking for. Teams that otherwise probably wouldn't find funding, wouldn't be able to get started up. And then we invest heavy early into those teams. So we're looking for, I'll say, we love technology risk. We hate market risk. In other words, if this works, okay, the market is obvious, but it's proving it works. So we want the best people. We invest heavily, we partner with them early, and then grow them into big, successful startups that everybody wants to invest in by the time they get to the C, D, or E round of funding. So we're seed A, B round funders. And, with it, hey, I love these technologists. And they're excited to have a guy like me on the team who's operated companies at scale, who's had to walk the halls of Congress to get funding and to truly shape technology policy.
All right, hang with us, Pat. We're going to go off for a quick break on opening big. Lots more to get to. Don't go anywhere, please. A special one-year episode. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid. As I've been saying, this is our one-year episode, 154 episodes, and of course, had to bring you a very special conversation. Pat Gellzinger, former Intel CEO, former VMware CEO. I didn't realize he's about to be an author, children's book. He surprised me with that one. Looking forward to checking that one out, even though I have no kids. I'm still going to read it because I want to see what you're up to, Pat. You mentioned you in Congress. I always saw you meeting with lawmakers. Of course, you met with then President Biden on the CHIPS Act. I just had a conversation with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and I came away thinking, Pat, wow, we really need to get more chip production in this country, and we need to do it like yesterday. Like, how important is this that this gets done? Not only using the CHIPS Act money, but companies like an Intel and Nvidia and AMD, which we have seen Nvidia and AMD and, of course, Intel, but they really put their foothold in the U.S.
Yeah. And clearly, and this is quite a rich topic area, Sazi. And hey, I spent 4 years, a lot of effort and I'll say shoe leather and right, the political cycle to help get CHIPS Act done. And I still believe it's the most important piece of industrial policy since World War II. Right, we have to be investing, creating the manufacturing incentives, but more importantly, even the long-term R&D. So I do think that remains important. Reshoring manufacturing is a critical piece of that. However, manufacturing alone isn't enough. We need the technology here, right? And if you are still dependent on Asia to design the transistor, then you're still dependent on Asia. And in the semiconductors, R&D and manufacturing are hand in hand with each other like few other industries are. So we need the R&D here as well. And that's why the Intels, Global Foundries, Microns are so critical. But also things like Natcast and NAPMP. We have to keep that long-term R&D. One of the companies that attracted me most to join Playground was Xlight. And if you think about a fab, what's in the middle of fab? Lithography, or EUV as it's called. What's in the middle of lithography? Light. God said, let there be light. And X-Light is building next generation light sources out of free electron lasers. And this is one of the companies that I believe will help us rebuild the long-term view of semiconductors here in the U.S. And quite excited. We just announced that I'm now the board chair for X-Lights and jumping on that one quite aggressively. And we do want to see that become a centerpiece of the U.S. semiconductor R&D initiatives, but also that we really use it to transform the economics as well as the long-term capacity of Moore's law in the U.S. And then, of course, the two other things that we've seen this administration put more pressure on. One is tariffs, and having supply chains neutral means they don't move. You must create incentives for supply chains to move. And I do think tariffs is a piece of that. The other is the investment fund that they've announced as well, essentially the U.S. sovereign wealth fund. We have to be putting our financial capacity to drive the long-term build out of not just the manufacturing and R&D and the long-term restoration of these engines. So all those together, I'm quite excited that, I think we have the opportunity, and those three pillars, the CHIPS Act, tariffs, and sovereign wealth fund, I think pretend to be a powerful combination.
Pat, on the topic of tariffs and the trade war, when you see news, as we have, that China is going to restrict critical earth minerals to, I would imagine, the U.S., and these things get used in semiconductors and various other electronics, how concerned are you that what China is doing on this front and other fronts in technology could impact the U.S. economy and the U.S. market?
Well, of course, I'm concerned in that regard, and I've always been a free trade, perspective in that, view and opinion. That said, rare earths, it's not the availability of the minerals, it's the refining. We have enough rare earths. We've allowed the refining. Some of that's been driven by economics. Some of that's been driven by environmental policy. We need to bring the refining back, and it either needs to be onshored, nearshored, or friendshored going forward. And, I think as we're trying to see those supply chains readjusted in a more balanced way, we also hope that friendlies, countries like Australia who have deep, long experience in mining and refining. Hey, let's get our friendshoring to accelerate some of these. But we also see that some of this is just great innovation. And some of the playground companies as well are finding new, more effective ways to bring minerals to life. One of our companies is doing quantum detection to be able to identify more sub-earth opportunities for ores, mining, and reserves. So, hey, I think technology, remains the way that we find our path forward.
Pat, I dig this new version of you because I can ask you certain things now that maybe I couldn't ask when you were leading Intel, and this is going to be one of them. Why isn't Apple making iPhones in this country? And then secondarily, can they make iPhones profitably in the U.S. in our lifetimes?
So there's two different perspectives there that I think deserve. One is, hey, they have enough profits, margin, et cetera. They can choose to go invest them appropriately. The thing about supply chains is I call them sedimenting, right? And what happens is you start to build them a certain place, and then the plastics company is built near where they are. And then the resistor company, and then the display company, right? And so what happens is these other elements of the supply chain start to aggregate around the core elements of the supply chain. So they sediment into those locations, and that sedimentation takes decades, right? It's not like this happens overnight. for it. Even though you say, hey, let's throw down concrete, let's move equipment in, let's start building in this spot. This takes decades for these to occur. So, that's why I think the need for policy today, because CEOs need to stand up and make decisions that will be decades long. And that's why we can't have flip-flopping of tariff policies, et cetera. We just say, here's our policy objectives, and then here's how we support them with the right financial inducements for those to occur. And absolutely, we can see those supply chains moved. And some of the things, if we go back to the earlier part of the interview, the primary reason supply chains moved to Asia was low-cost labor. Well, as we get more and more AI-driven robotic automation, right, you're able to say, I can now run a U.S. robot at $1 per hour compared to $6 per hour for a low-cost Asian site versus $30 per hour for a high-cost U.S. site. Use the technologies to allow us to reshore, but it's going to take a while of consistent policy and investment for that reshoring to occur.
But in an iPhone made in the U.S., it still would cost more than what is being made out of China. I mean, the iPhone one, $900. I mean, but I was trying to figure out if the administration, when I talked to Secretary Besson, if they would be okay with having an iPhone cost more if it's made in America. And I just couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, and there will be cost associated with bringing supply chains back. Again, it took decades for them to sediment away. They don't return because you ask them to. They return because you've created economic incentives, capital capacity to drive their return. So I think unquestionably you're going to see some cost increases, but the ultimate cost of a highly automated, robotics-driven supply chain is less than an Asian supply chain. There is the promise on the other side. And hey, I'm not shipping it across the ocean multiple times, but this will take a while. It takes new automation, and it takes economic policy to drive the resedimentation of the supply chain around friendshore or nearshoring of those technologies. So, somebody who says it can't be done, I would say hogwash. This can be done, but it requires investment and consistent policy for it to occur. And of course, a little bit magic of technology.
Another one of those questions, Pat, that maybe you could probably answer now. Now, you went to Nvidia's GTC, if I'm correct. You saw Jensen Huang do his thing, lay out a product roadmap for the next, 5 years? What company's doing that? And take a step back. How far exactly is Nvidia out in front of rivals with its technology?
Yeah, it's there's two aspects that you see. They are executing well, right? At the end of the day, and Jensen is on it, right, driving his teams to stay in the front end because as I'd say, I can't throw a rock, right, without hitting a new AI startup in the Bay Area, right? And I throw okay, but not that good, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, they're all over the place because that multi-$100 billion silicon AI accelerator market is so attractive. So they know they have to run and run hard to stay in front. But second, at that point, there's this flurry of activity around them. They've built meaningful moats. It isn't just that they're executing well, but NVLink is a moat, right? They have the best connectivity. CUDA, hey, you can malign it. You could talk about Pythonic programming and, what DeepSeek did with eliminating everything for optimization purposes. But most developers just take the easy path. And there's a lot of CUDA out there. Again, another moat that reinforces their position. So, they're executing well, and they have built meaningful moats around their franchise. Now, on the other side of it, as I also said at GTC, the need for low-cost, high-performance inferencing, we're not a little bit away from what we need. I said it needs to be 10,000 times cheaper and more available than it is today so that we have that true internet-like moment, right? Where my kids are on the internet, if I keep them off of it for 10 seconds, I have ruined their existence, right? Well, we need that with our AI technologies, and that requires a dramatic reduction. And I'm not sure that the GPU, I'm pretty convinced the GPU is the right architecture for training purposes today. I'm not convinced it's the right architecture for inferencing workloads, which will dominate going forward as you go to lower precision in-memory computing, memory bandwidth limitations, et cetera. So, I do think there's going to be architectural opportunity to take leaps ahead of where we are today.
Can
the final
can Nvidia and I'll put AMD in there. Can these companies, Pat, you think they can keep their moats for the next decade, or there's another Nvidia somewhere out there that people don't see and they don't realize it?
Yeah, I've always viewed that there's sort of this 10x rule, Saucy, right? Where if you're not 10x better than the king, you're not going to displace them, right? And right, here you have to be at least sustainably 10x better, and then people will say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go invest in that. And again, a lot of interesting things going on in the connectivity, in the memory architecture, low radix compute, sparse sparse memory environments. As you go to reasoning, where it isn't just compute, right? It's now, I'll say, a much more balanced view of models that are more traditional compute with AI or GPU centric models. So I do think there's disruption because there's architectural innovations going on, and the workloads are changing as well.
And of course, we're going to go into a little bit of overtime here because it is our 1-year anniversary, episode 154, and it's not often you get access to a top executive like Mr. Pat Gellzinger. Pat, now that you've had some time away from Intel, what is the future of this company?
My goals for Intel haven't changed. Intel, right, as the only active R&D for leading edge transistors in the US, that's critical. And, this idea of them becoming an IDM 2.0, a foundry and a products company, I think remains the right path. And the company has said nothing different since I've left in terms of strategic objectives, for it. And I still think that's the right path. 18A is a great process technology, and 14A was going to be even better for it when I left. So I still think that's necessary. I think it's necessary for the company, necessary for the nation, and I wish nothing but the best, and will do anything I can to be helpful in the company and the new CEO accomplishing exactly that.
A lot of folks do tell me, Pat, that it is important for the country that Intel gets its mojo back. And you busted your butt off to make that happen. I mean, in terms of getting the CHIPS Act money passed, building these plants to make your own chips. But is it fair to say the next 3 years are defining for Intel? And if they don't get this right, or whatever this is, what does the next decade really look like for them?
I think it's a critical couple of years. When I took the job, I said it was 5+ years.
Yeah, I remember that.
To get it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I said it over and over again. So I think, as 18A materializes, you now have leadership transistors back in the U.S. The pathway for leadership manufacturing as Arizona and Ohio come online, the most advanced packaging in New Mexico. So I continue to believe all these pieces are super important as well. And again, I wish nothing but the absolute best for the new CEO, for the leadership team there, because this is critical for the industry and the nation.
To pull off their turnaround, Pat, do they need partners? Are they going to need partners to make it happen?
Oh, of course. And obviously you have people like ASML that are important, but more important at this point would be big foundry customers.
Lastly, yeah, sure. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. And we know the names of that, but the U.S. designs and sells well over 50% of semiconductors today. 55, 58, different studies, have shown that. And those big companies, they need to become foundry customers for Intel to build those big factories, to have the volumes, drive the manufacturing and the long-term technology. Those are the most important partners for Intel at this point.
Lastly, Pat, did you, over the course of, I covered you day one you got the Intel job, and you came on with us every single quarter, no matter what these results were. Now you have time to reflect. What did you learn over these 5 years about you, about leadership, that when that next technologist comes into playground, you're going to maybe take them off to the side and share a little inspirational wisdom with them? What do you share with them from this experience?
Well, clearly, building a great leadership team is essential, right? No matter how good the CEO is, you need a great leadership team around them. Stay true to the vision for it. And, I believe that from day one.
You never wavered. You never wavered.
Yeah.
Not once.
Right? For it. And then you need the financial capacity and board alignment to support it. And, clearly, as I come onto the board of some of these playground, companies, building the right financial capacity, but also the right board dynamics to get it to the finish line.
Pat, I want to thank you for always making time with me. You've always been gracious time-wise. Been talking to me for many years. We appreciate it. I wish you a lot of success in these new roles and your new book. Keep the artwork coming. Waiting for that signed copy. Thanks for being here for a 1-year episode, and we're on to, I guess, 300 more episodes soon. Because what else do you do in content land? You just create more content, Pat.
And I look forward to chatting again, Sazi, and being back sometime before the 2-year anniversary.
Yes, you will indeed be back, sir. All right, Pat, thank you so much. That, of course, was Pat Gellzinger, former Intel CEO, former VMware CEO, technologist, artist, and soon-to-be author, celebrating our 1-year anniversary on the Opening Bid podcast, 154 episodes. Hat tip to the Yahoo Finance team. This team crushes it every single day. They wake up every morning to help millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of investors globally build their wealth, and I'm really thankful to be a part of this team. That's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid.